Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
It happens every winter when temperatures drop, utility bills rise. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. San Diego utility bills may be higher than the rest of the year because it's colder outside, but those bills are down sharply from a year ago. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson explains why.
January natural gas bills skyrocketed last year as a combination of cold weather and short supply pushed the cost of the commodity into record territory. That changed this year. There's more natural gas in storage, a large pipeline has been fixed, and it's warmer this year.
Last year, the cost of the all-in price for gas was $5.11. Today, it's $2.14 for that same therm, and that represents an 86% reduction in the overall cost to our residential customer.
The average SDG&E natural gas customer had a bill of about $225 during the first month of the year. That average fell by more than half to about $96 this January. Customers are also getting an 11% reduction, about $14 in their electricity bill.
That savings stems from two things. First, we were able to lower costs, and we had more electrical sales.
The sales increase might be linked to the proliferation of electric vehicles, but the utility concedes the savings may not last through summer. The California Public Utilities Commission is expected to make a decision by mid-year about SDG&E's request to raise rates as part of the company's regular general rate request. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Some positive economic news today. The rate of inflation improved significantly over the course of last year. That's according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. But that doesn't necessarily mean the things that you buy are getting cheaper. Ivan Rodriguez breaks down what this means for your wallet in 2024.
The prices of U.S. consumer goods and services continue to rise in 2023, capping a year of progress towards reining in decades-high inflation.
Inflation increased a little bit faster than expected during the month of December, but we're still seeing progress, moving in the right direction, albeit slowly.
Federal data released Thursday shows a 3.4% increase in prices last year, down by nearly half from December 2022, when the inflation rate was at 6.5%.
2023 was a year where we saw inflation, the rate of inflation come down dramatically. Now, that doesn't mean prices are coming down, just means they're not going up as fast. But the important point is that we're now back to a situation where income is growing faster than inflation.
The economic picture for consumers is improving. The cost of food and energy have come down significantly from 2022, but many households are still struggling, especially as the cost of shelter, medical care, and motor vehicle insurance continue to rise.
They're still feeling the effects of high prices and maybe income that hasn't necessarily kept up with that or has barely kept up, and so they haven't seen an increase in buying power.
Despite meaningful progress on inflation, Bankrate.com's Greg McBride predicts the December numbers will likely put a damper on investors' hopes of interest rate cuts by early spring.
The Fed is likely to cut rates this year, but it's probably not going to happen to the middle or back half of the year, and that too is just contingent upon us continuing to see further improvement.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
It's a chilly night out there. It's been breezy. The winds are diminishing, so at least we're moving in the right direction. But we're going to get cold out there tonight, down to 30 in Ramona. Escondido falls to the freezing point. We'll get down into the low 40s in the city, and areas around Campo and Mount Laguna will fall below freezing as well tonight. So looking ahead, we're going to turn gradually quieter into the day on Friday. So we'll be looking at the details of what's on the other side of this weather pattern coming up in just a little bit.
King tides and high winds brought some flooding to the coast, including in La Jolla. Lifeguards had their work cut out for them, cleaning up and keeping people safe. Crews shoveled what the waves rolled into a parking lot. And meanwhile, the city's Transportation and Parks and Recreation departments created beams to prevent flooding in low-lying areas.
There's a storm drain that runs under the sidewalk, under the boardwalk, into the sand. So the lifeguard is shoveling in front of that storm drain so that the water can actually recede out into the ocean. Well, once the storm drain is cleared underneath the boardwalk, water will slowly start to make its way back to take a path out back into the ocean.
The crews will have to do this each day to help drain stormwater. The big waves and tide also delayed a surf competition in the North County. We'll tell you more about it later in the show. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria gave his annual State of the City address last night. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen notes there were some newsworthy announcements.
We are getting things done, and as a result, the state of our city is getting stronger every day.
Much of the mayor's speech was touting progress on filling potholes, clearing homeless encampments, and improving the morale of city employees. On housing policy, he said he's ordered city staff to permit new apartment buildings within 30 days if they use an affordable housing incentive program called Complete Communities.
Complete Communities incentivizes housing near transit. And last year, it accounted for 1,000 of the new homes permitted, with 15% of those set aside for low and moderate income San Diegans. This new, faster timeline will likely increase those numbers, creating even more homes that San Diegans can afford.
If city staff are able to implement the mayor's order, mixed-income housing that's close to public transit will get fast-tracked, and housing far from transit could face delays. Gloria also made a big announcement on public works projects. Next month, he'll ask the city council to approve an agreement to hire unionized workers for major city construction projects. He said that will help ensure those projects are completed on time and on budget.
It will provide the city with a reliable source of highly skilled workers for all city construction projects. It will encourage the employment of local residents with these good-paying jobs, and they will meet high standards for worker health and safety.
The proposal is likely to win approval from the city council, which is stacked with allies of organized labor. This was Gloria's last State of the City address before he faces voters to seek a second term. The primary election is on March 5th. 4 challengers are hoping to unseat him. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
San Diego is launching a Cannabis Equity program. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson spoke with hopeful participants who say Mayor Gloria is under-delivering.
More than a dozen people protest silently outside the mayor's annual State of the City address downtown. They're holding signs that say things like, "Come on, Mayor, make cannabis fair," and "Jailed for cannabis, can't enter market." The city just launched their Social Equity and Economic Development, or SEED program. It's meant to create opportunities for people criminalized for cannabis, disproportionately Black and brown, to enter the now legal industry. City staff initially recommended 36 cannabis equity licenses, reduced restrictions that could help level the playing field with existing cannabis outlets, legal and financial assistance. They just announced they're delivering on all of that, but at half the scale. They will issue just 18 equity licenses through a lottery system.
The same place I was physically incarcerated in handcuffs in a cop car, there is now a dispensary owned by the same people who are going against us. The irony in that.
That's Cannabis Equity organizer Armand King, who says the mayor is caving to pressure from current operators. King wants a merit-based system for participants to reinvest profit in their communities, and for 36 licenses to match the number of current operators.
36 would have been equal. You offering 18, that means we're less than equal? That just reminds me of we're 3/5 of a human being. We're still less than equal to you, Mayor?
A city spokesperson said only that they met with King and that Gloria did not think a higher number of equity licenses was a good idea. City staff will present the program to the Planning Commission next month and to the full City Council in the spring. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Today, the San Diego City Attorney's Office unveiled a new forensic interview facility for children. It's at Your Safe Place, the office's Family Justice Center downtown. Officials say sometimes investigators need to speak to children who have either witnessed or are victims of crimes, and they need a safe place to do so. The facility is designed to be inviting and comfortable for children so they can focus on the interview without distraction.
When the detectives select those children to come in here and tell their story, we want them to tell and to share what happened to them once and only once. Because the children are, as City Attorney Mara Elliott said, our most vulnerable victims.
A specially trained forensic professional will interview children instead of police. A key contractor for Boeing is talking to federal investigators about the fuselage door plug that blew off an Alaska airline flight last week. Meanwhile, another aviation safety agency is investigating Boeing directly. Laura Aguirre has more.
We know what broke. We need to understand how it broke.
What broke was a fuselage door plug on Alaska Air Flight 1282 last Friday. It blew off shortly after takeoff, depressurizing the cabin and terrifying the passengers inside until the crew could land the jet safely. The door plug was later found on the lawn of a Portland, Oregon home.
We're going to look at it in a microscope and figure out where their bolts here in the first place.
Questions that may be answered by Spirit Aerosystems, a Boeing contractor that builds the fuselages for the 737 MAX 9 aircraft.
Our job is to understand literally everything that has happened, everything that surrounds that particular fuselage plug, and fix it.
Spirit Aerosystems executives say they're cooperating with the NTSB's investigation, noting in a statement that they remain focused on the quality of each aircraft structure that leaves their facility.
We have asked everybody who touches our processes to volunteer information that might cite a nonconformance.
The FAA announced Thursday that it's launching an investigation of its own into Boeing. In a post on X, the FAA says such an incident should have never happened, and it will determine if Boeing failed to ensure its products met the approved design and could be operated safely. Boeing CEO says he isn't ready to point fingers at Spirit Aerosystems directly.
Yes, it escaped their factory, but then it escaped ours too. So we're all in this together. We have to figure this one out.
I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
There's a new plan calling for safety regulations when it comes to autonomous vehicles in California. A new bill would let local lawmakers decide and not the state. Dustin Dorsey has the details.
The future of artificial intelligence is out there, even driving right past you on the streets. The new wave of technology is something that many leaders like State Senator Dave Cortese wants to embrace. But when it comes to autonomous vehicles, he wants to pump the brakes on the current regulations, or lack thereof.
We've never really had a system in this country where, you know, from the Henry Ford days, where you just go out and experiment on the streets, you know, without traffic laws in place and without the kind of requirements that keep it safe for everyone.
After seeing issues involving safety of these AVs in places like San Francisco and Los Angeles, Senator Cortese introduced Senate Bill 915 to steer driverless car safety into the hands of local governments, who currently have no influence. Cortese says once the CPUC and DMV permits the cars to be on the roads, there are not enough accountability measures as piloted vehicles. He believes putting local governments in charge of closing this loophole is best for safety.
City councils and county boards of supervisors meet every week. They can craft an ordinance. They can come back and tweak that a month later. They're much more nimble than the state of California.
AI experts agree regulation is needed, but some like UC Berkeley professor Scott Morris says SB 915 isn't exactly how he would like it done. He thinks a top-down approach from the state is better.
Then it's standardized and uniform at the broadest scale possible, which can ensure best practices everywhere. And it's going to be very difficult for AV companies if basically every community they're working with has a different form of regulation.
San Jose State professor Ahmed Banafa says it may be a challenge, but it's still doable. And he adds these companies better be ready for continued calls for regulation across the board as AI becomes more mainstream.
This year, 2024, is the year of the AI applications. And the application cannot be accepted and in the market without regulations.
Senator Cortese says SB 915's first policy committee vote will be in March. Dustin Dorsey.
A new state law aims to cut down on drink spiking. It would require bars and nightclubs that don't serve food to have drink testing kits available to customers. Businesses would also be required to post a notice that the test kits are available.
We believe that if somebody has a test coaster out in view, that somebody who's trying to drug them may think twice about it. It feels good to get a bill across the finish line and have the governor sign it, but I'm only going to feel happy when we know we're making an impact on cutting down on sexual assault.
A spokesperson for the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control says they are still working to figure out how this law will be implemented, and it goes into effect July 1st. The San Diego Union-Tribune recently canceled its Spanish language weekly, part of a nationwide trend. News industry observers told KPBS's Amita Sharma the move eliminates a vital information source for the area's second largest ethnic group at a pivotal time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Some incredible breaking news to tell you about.
At their best, journalists give people situational awareness during emergencies and save lives. As wildfires ripped through eastern San Diego County in October 2003, reporter Iram Soto did just that. Soto was working for the San Diego Union-Tribune's weekly Spanish language edition. He drove toward the fires to interview farm workers.
It was all full of smoke. You couldn't really breathe, and they were still picking tomatoes and strawberries. They didn't even know that there were evacuation orders.
It was Soto who told the farm workers to evacuate. 20 years later, he says he could have never delivered that crucial news had the weekly not existed. So he was heartbroken last month when he heard the paper's new owner, Alden Global Capital, had killed the Spanish language edition. The private equity firm laid off the UT en Español's editor and 2 reporters. Soto worries that 2 decades of gains will now be lost. The UT en Español served a county where 35% of its 3 million people are Latino, and 150,000 cross the border with Mexico daily.
Before this publication, the Union-Tribune's coverage of immigrant communities, of Latino communities, of border communities were very centered on crime and drug trafficking, etc. When this publication opened, it broadened it to cover the arts, community leaders, that uplifted people that were doing real change in the community.
Representatives for both the Union-Tribune and Alden refused to comment. Tim Franklin is director of the Medill Local News Initiative at Northwestern University. He says Alden puts the bottom line first.
Alden is going to jettison what it views as its most costly or least profitable pieces of its operation.
But Alden is hardly the outlier. Franklin just updated a large Medill database on local news organizations across the country. He says ethnic media took a huge hit during the pandemic as its main source of advertising revenue, mom and pop businesses, shuttered.
In 2020, there were about 900 ethnic media outlets in the United States. We've lost 173 of those in the last 3 years since the pandemic. And of the 173 that closed, 106 were Latino publications, most of those Spanish language publications.
The timing couldn't be worse for those who depended on the weekly. This is an election year with immigration, education, and civil rights on the ballot.
It limits their ability to participate in democracy or for them to even prepare their children to participate in democracies.
Arelis Hernandez, vice president for print with the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, says so many communities are still dominant Spanish speakers.
Latinos have grown to more than 19% of the population, and we're continuing to grow. There's a migrant population that is increasingly needing resources in their language to be able to navigate this new world of the United States.
Art Castaneris is publisher of the Spanish language weekly La Prensa San Diego. He says even many bilingual people like to read their news in Spanish.
It's not just the language. It's understanding the culture, understanding the impact of all of these issues
and how they impact Latinos and being sensitive to that.
For Iram Soto, it's also about trust. He says the UT Spanish language edition gained trust with local Latinos in 2007 when firestorms returned. He reported on migrants who were burned to death atop Tecate Peak.
We found the bodies of people who were burned. We found, we told the stories of people who were lost crossing the border and the stories behind it and how people in the community rallied and provided the resources for rescuers to go and find their loved ones.
Soto says those pieces told Latinos that the paper cared about them. He fears that's no longer true. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
As we take a look at what's going on over the next few days here, we've had some chilly weather. Winds are diminishing. We still have some cold weather tonight, though. Temperatures are going to be down below freezing for some of you in inland areas, but then we're going to gradually turn milder. And we will see a shower or two, just very, very localized in a few spots this weekend. Moisture will increase, but we're not expecting much locally. Chilly night for us tonight, down to 43 in the city with a mainly clear sky. And into the day tomorrow after that cold start, we'll bounce back up to around 42 at Mount Laguna, 64 in El Cajon, and it'll be a pleasant but still somewhat coolish day, just a little bit warmer than we have been. It won't be as windy, though, so that's a step in the right direction. Friday, high pressure will be here. Dry weather will be with us. We're watching for another round of moisture that just kind of glances the area here, glancing blow into the weekend. Here we go through Friday afternoon, some moisture off to the north. Sometimes we call these storm systems inside sliders because the core of the moisture, the bulk of it, is going to pass to our east with the current storm system this Friday moving through the Great Basin. But behind that, the tail of a front is going to bring at least some showers to parts of central California Saturday, and a few of these may hold together just long enough to bring us a few sprinkles on Saturday night. We're not expecting much, though. It's going to be cool, but not as cold as we have been. So that forecast for coastal areas, you can see periods of sun Saturday, maybe a sprinkle Saturday night, kind of lost between the days here. And then we do warm up a little bit more into Monday with that warming trend taking us back to 67 degrees and lows back into the 40s as opposed to the 30s in some spots. Inland areas here, we can see a mix of clouds and some sun on Saturday as the clouds increase. A couple of sprinkles possible Saturday night. Nothing widespread. We do warm up into the upper 60s and even near 70 come Tuesday. Taking you into the mountains here. This is when, again, after a few sprinkles near the coast Saturday night, a couple of showers may be around on Sunday. We will be about 5 degrees cooler Sunday with the moisture. And then we stay somewhat chilly into Monday and Tuesday. And then into the deserts we go. Here, mainly dry. A couple of extra clouds Sunday morning with that passing disturbance. Then we warm up to 68 on Monday. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
As another round of king tides begins to hit San Diego beaches, a first-of-its-kind surf event in Oceanside is in full swing. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says the WSL World Junior Championships adds to the city's impressive roster of surf competitions.
It began on Tuesday and will last through the weekend. For the first time, the World Surf League Junior Championships is being held in Oceanside. Even though a high surf advisory is in effect across county beaches through 6 p.m. tonight, the competition continued on with some delays due to king tides, big waves, and high winds. Australian surfer Marlon Harrison was still able to get in the water for the event, and in the morning on his own time during the dangerous conditions.
Yeah, so a group of my friends, we ended up paddling like 200 meters up, maybe even 300, and we're just paddling our hearts off, and we got to the pier, and it was just like that 10-second little period between waves, and it was like through the pier, out the back, and it was just like, oh God, it was just like so scary because it's like, there's a lot of barnacles on that pier, so I do not want to get washed up against it.
WSL North America Tour Manager Brian Robbins says the winter weather and Oceanside Pier setting add to the high-energy event.
The venue's just great. I mean, the pier kind of creates sort of a stadium-like atmosphere. We've got parking, we've got a big beach, there's a community here, so there's infrastructure to not only create a crowd scene, but like a bit of dynamics with the surfers.
The event brings together the best junior surfers 20 years old and younger from around the globe. As of Thursday morning, just 16 women and 16 men are left, including 16-year-old Sierra Kerr. Her heat got delayed due to Thursday's weather, but she's hoping to bring home a title over the next few days. It has extra meaning for her as she splits time between Australia and Carlsbad in North San Diego County.
It's cool because my friends can come watch and my family, they're all here supporting, so it's super good to have that local thing.
Tyler Garcia is the Vice President of Business and Brand Development for Visit Oceanside. He says events like the World Surf League Junior Championships reinforce that Oceanside is a surfing mecca, which benefits the local tourism industry in both the short and long term.
We're home to the U.S. Adaptive Surf Championships. We're also home to the Supergirls Surf Pro, and USA Surfing does their championships here as well for some of their events. So really cool repertoire of events, and this just fits in naturally.
Garcia and Robbins say they hope the event will be back next year in Oceanside. For this year's competition, surfers will continue to battle it out each day through the weekend with a more standard schedule, and the public is welcome to watch. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR's Morning Edition talks with the president and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce about the business community's economic optimism. And KPBS Roundtable is discussing San Diego schools as pandemic funding runs out and a budget shortfall looms. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.